Hi and welcome to the Ruby and Pearls knitting channel. My name is Leah and I'm coming to you today with another standard format podcast episode. As usual, I'm coming to you from West Wales in the UK, where I live with my partner and our two dogs, Ruby and Pearl. They're currently behaving downstairs because I've given them a treat, so we will see. They might make an appearance later. I am trying to get the last little bit of daylight today, and I've just come home from work and I've had a shower and my hair is wet and a mess, so I've just popped a hat on because I'm not wearing any knitwear at the minute. So this is the Musselburgh hat by Isolde Teague. I've knit many of these. It is a wonderful pattern, and I knit this particular one in a skein from Spectrum Fibre that I bought in a D-stash, so I didn't have a label with it, but it's this really cool neon-y, bluey, yellowy colour. It's blowing out a little bit, but yeah. It's one of my favourite hats. So if you are a returning viewer, thank you so much for being here again. And if you are new, welcome. I film standard format podcast episodes over on this channel, as well as other content such as knit and chats and little snippets of sharing my experience at the end of podcasts and giving tips and tricks. I also do pattern roundup videos, so if you found me through one of those, thank you for being here. And if you would consider subscribing and liking this video and leaving me a comment, I would really appreciate it. I want to start off this video by saying thank you so much to those of you who left me a comment on my last video. I was a little bit apprehensive about filming last episode because I was concerned about my autumn knitting plans, and I didn't need to be concerned. You were all really lovely and really kind and left me some lovely comments and said that you didn't really care whether I was completing my plans or not, or whether I was doing any of the things that I had planned to knit. So thank you for your kind comments. I really appreciate them. I think the reason I got so worried about my autumn knitting plans and them not really working out was that I hadn't done any pattern roundup videos by that point, and that was sort of my first kind of roundup video. And it was a very successful video. It was my most successful video at that point in time. So I thought people really wanted to see me knit these particular items. So I'm grateful that you don't really care what I knit on and that you are here regardless. So thank you. The other thing I wanted to say up front before we jump in today is that I am in a bit of a knitting slump, and I hope you won't be able to tell too much when I talk about my project. But I am a little bit fed up with things not working out as I had planned. And I think I get these little knitting slumps, but maybe 3 or 4 times a year when no project really appeals to me. And that's not the case at the moment. The problem I'm having is that most of my garments aren't working out properly. And I will talk about this more at the end of today's video. So if you'd like to hear me talk about my thoughts and feelings about garments that don't work out and how to get around that, then stay tuned to the end. I have 4 finished objects to share with you today, and I'm going to go through them fairly quickly because I'm going to lose daylight, so we're just going to get through this video together. My first finished object are my dad's socks that I showed you last time. They are complete. I have 2. They are blocked. They are just vanilla socks, and this yarn I believe was a Rico design yarn, an alpaca yarn, and it is a self-patterning yarn. And yeah, there's nothing special to say about these. I just wanted to prove the special thing about them, and that is that I completed a pair of socks this year. They are vanilla, top down, 72 stitch, and yeah, they are finished. So I'm really glad that I've done those. My second finished object are my gecko mitts. This is a design by Maya Déglon from Maya Tinks. It's currently in testing, and it is a very big design in the sense that you get to choose between Aran and DK gauge. You also get to choose between a ribbed version and a half fisherman's rib version, or half brioche rather she calls it, because I think she does the yarn overs rather than the knitting below, but it's essentially the same thing. And she also instructs you on how to do it striped, and I think the pattern's coming in English and in French, so it is a bumper pattern, and I finished mine in a day. And they're going to look a little bit silly off the hand, so I'm going to show you. There we are. There are my gecko mitts. I knit mine in the DK version in ribbing. They feature a tubular cast on. You knit up and then you create the gusset by working increases along here, and then you continue this kind of shaping and making it sort of so that it biases around. And that was the inspiration for the name. She has a pet gecko and he sort of likes to curl around her hand, so that is why they are called the gecko mitts. I knit mine in Drops Fiesta in the shade Rainbow Sprinkles, and I used pretty much exactly 100 grams. So there they are, my finished gecko mitts. I haven't got any finished item photos for these yet because it's kind of hard to take a picture of mitts when you want both of them to be shown in the photo. So I might just have a photo of one, we will see. But I need to take some pictures so I can hand them over to Maya as part of the test knit. They also have tubular cast-offs at the top and also on the thumbs. They're very neat, they're very clean, they're very fun to knit. I really enjoyed these, and I think I'm going to be gifting them to my sister-in-law. And yeah, I really enjoyed these. And the main reason I'm going to gift them is because I've decided that I would really like to have a set of neutral coloured accessories, and not necessarily, you know, all of them in the same stitch pattern, but all of them in the same yarn that are neutral, that work well together. Because I noticed that while this hat just about goes with my coat is actually a similar colour to this. It's sort of an army green, toned down more than this. And while I think it's okay to wear it with my coat, I don't have any other accessories that go with this hat. And I then wind up just wearing either a hat or a scarf, but not multiple things. And it can get quite cold and quite windy, so I would like to have a proper set. So I have purchased some beigey creamy coloured yarn in a sort of end of line sale in my local yarn shop, and I'm hoping to make myself a bit of a winter set with that. So that will be coming at some point, maybe in my winter knitting plans, or maybe before then, we will see. But that is the only reason why I will be gifting these. My third finished object is a bit of a funky one, so strap in. I knit a hat in Alpaca Blend Chunky from Rico, which is a alpaca, wool and polyester blend. Polyester or polyamide? Acrylic. Polyacryl, there we are. So it's about 50% synthetic and the rest is wool and alpaca. It's a chunky weight yarn, and this is a hat that I'm making on a commission. Now, get ready. I'm not going to try this on because it's still a bit wet. This is Penny's Santa hat. This is a hat that Penny wears in The Big Bang Theory, and it's supposed to have pom-poms on these ends here, but I washed and blocked it without putting the pom-poms on, and I have got these faux fur fluffy pom-poms to go on there afterwards once it's dry. So it's not fully dry yet, so I can't quite show you that yet. I apologise if you can hear some funny sniffles. That is Purl, she has entered the room. But yeah, I knit this as a commission. And the way this worked was that my friend from Switzerland, her friend requested this hat and asked whether I could knit this hat for her. So that is what I have done. And yeah, I just need to attach the pom-poms. This is a pattern by I Knit for a Cure, I think is the shop name. It is on Etsy. That's where I found sort of the best version of this hat. There are a few different patterns out there to sort of recreate Penny's hat, but this is the one that I thought was the neatest. And I made a couple of modifications. So I didn't read the pattern through in advance, which I definitely should have. And in the photos, it looked like this brim was going to be double folded, when actually it was just cast on and then folded up. And I didn't do a tubular cast on or anything particularly fancy. So I decided when I knit the brim, and it was to the proper length, I folded it to the inside and I picked up the cast on edge and knit it together with the cast on before, you know, whilst also changing into the red colour, so that it would stay nice and neatly there and there wouldn't be a sort of not very attractive edge there from just a regular long tail cast on. I then knit this to pattern. I was supposed to use a 4mm for the brim and a 5 for the body of the hat. I just used 4.5 throughout. And then a couple more modifications that I made. This very last cable crossing was supposed to be one row sooner than all the others. So there was supposed to be one row less of ribbing in between. And I just didn't see any point in doing that. So I added an extra row in. And the final thing I did is I worked a round of knit two togethers before I pulled these ends tight, because they are just a pinhole sort of, you know, put the tail of the yarn through all the live stitches. And there were over 20 stitches on the needles, and I felt that that would just end up with a hole, and I didn't really like the idea of that. So I ended up decreasing one round just to make that a little bit neater. But yeah, I think it looked a bit funky when I put it on before blocking, because these were really standing up. But now, thanks to the alpaca drape, they will hang back quite nicely, and then you will have the pom-poms on there, which will give them some weight as well. So this will be a cute Christmas hat. And yes, I'm really grateful I finished this, and it was a very quick knit. The finished object is the Stamford sweater by the Knit Purl girl. And you saw this in my last episode if you were watching. I'm going to show you one sleeve here. I'll show you the other sleeve is very different here. I knit this sweater as part of the Random Sweater Cal, which was hosted by someone called Will You Look at Mella on Instagram. And she decided to host this cal. I think there's a group chat, but I didn't take part in any of that. I just knit this garment, and you could pick any pattern you liked. And the idea is that you gather random balls of yarn that you have in your stash, and you give them all a number. So I picked 5 colours. You then give them all a number. You let the random number generator decide which colour you're going to use next. And then after that, you also decide how many rows or rounds you're going to be knitting via random number generator. And I decided to go for anything between 1 and 10. So every time I got the app out, I just downloaded a free app. I would first pick a number between 1 and 5 for the colour, and then a number between 1 and 10 for the amount of rows. And interestingly, I used a heck of a lot of cream in the yoke, and I had the fewest, the shortest amount of cream left, so that was quite annoying. I then got a different cream yarn to sort of substitute in, and it has just started raining, so I don't know if you can hear that, but you know, this is the season that we're in. And I decided to go for mismatched. So as you can see, my sleeves are totally different from the body and from each other. I made a couple of modifications. The first one I made was that I made this neckline half the depth that Sophie recommends, and that was just because I wanted to do that in one colour, as opposed to all the other ribbings I did continuing in stripes. And I wanted to do that in one colour, and I didn't want it to be so much bigger or so much thicker than any of the other stripes. Therefore, I made it half the thickness. I made the button band as per pattern, and then I just shortened the body like Sophie recommended if you liked the look of her sample. I think I shortened the stockinette by 6 centimetres and the ribbing by 2, so I had 8 centimetres less of length, which is what overall she did in her version. And it is a beautiful garment, but I'm not happy with it. And this has nothing to do with the pattern and everything to do with me picking things that I know deep down I won't be wearing. So the issue I have with this is not the fact that it's mismatched and that it's random and that it's not symmetrical. I like that. I think that is quite cool. What I don't like is that this sweater has very little ease on me. And because I was worried about the ease, I ended up cropping it too much. So it reaches my high-waisted jeans right at the top, but if I move around, you can see what I'm wearing underneath. I don't really like that look. And the reason I cropped it so much is that I have, for reference, a 90 centimetre bust and 105 centimetre hips. So right on the bones, I'm 105 centimetres. Meaning that a garment that has about 15 centimetres of positive ease, which this does, and I sized up by 1, and it's supposed to have about 15 centimetres of positive ease, will be roughly at a neutral ease point at my hips. So I need to be quite careful how long I knit something like that so that it doesn't look unflattering, and I tend to err on the side of caution and crop more than I should have, and therefore it just doesn't really fit me very well. And I think I've just come to the conclusion that I like oversized garments a lot more than I like more fitted things. I know 15 centimetres of positive ease isn't fitted, but for a sweater, I just like anywhere between 20 and 30 centimetres. That is my sweet spot, and that is what I'm comfortable with. And that is just something I really need to start realising. So a pattern like this, I just need to stay clear of or really size up, and then make sure I try it on regularly to make sure that I get, get the yoke depth and the other lengths correctly. So that is the Stamford sweater. There's nothing wrong with it, but I don't think it will be staying in my possession. I have 3 whips that I would like to share with you today. My 4th whip is the rosy sweater, but it has had 0 work done to it since last I showed it to you. So I've decided I'm just going to not show you that today. Sorry, there's some birds flying over and they're distracting me. So my first whip is an oldie that I started last year. Also, you might be able to see my new plant here in shot. I bought myself a Monstera Thai constellation and she's absolutely beautiful and sits now in the spot where I'm filming, so I've had to move her out the way a bit, but you can see her a little bit there. This is the Halibut sweater by Caitlyn Hunter from Boyland Knitworks. You get it the right way around. It's so good. I love this design. It's so cool. And I knit this yoke last winter and then put it on hold because I was on the sea of stockinette in black yarn. This is Wendy Mode, I think it's called. I don't know if it's been discontinued. I bought it discounted at my local yarn shop. It is a 50-50 merino acrylic blend. And I am on the body, and as you can see, I think I paused just after the colour work, so I've done some decent work on the body there. Let's see if I hold it here, the lighting's just blowing out otherwise. And the only issue I have with this sweater, it's not really an issue, but I finished the yoke and my partner said, "Oh, I really like that. Would you make that for me?" And he never asked for knitwear, so I really can't say no. And I have a ton of sweaters and it's a round yoke and they don't tend to fit me very well, but trying this on, it actually fits me quite well. And I love how this looks. I think it's so impressive and so cool. And I think what I just need to do is knit another one after. I just need to finish this one and knit one for myself. And maybe use a slightly variegated colour or something like that. So I just need to power through with this. The issue that I have with it, it's not an issue, but the reason it's taking so long is because my partner has quite a long torso and I think men don't tend to want cropped sweaters. And this is a very deep yoke, as you might be able to see. And I think I actually shortened the yoke a little bit. I think I removed a motif at the top or something. And I went as quickly into the sleeve split as I possibly could. But because it's a deep yoke, when you move your arms, it has a tendency to ride up. So I really need to make sure I give this enough length. And that's why it's taking me a long time to knit. But I will get this done. And he is excited to own this sweater. And I think it will really look really cool on him. So I'm just plodding along with this, and yeah, I need to make one for myself because how cool is that? Or just pinch this one every now and then and wear it. I'll definitely wear it on the podcast when it's finished just to show you what it looks like. It's quite oversized on me, but I quite like that. So yeah, that is the Halibut sweater, a top-down colourwork yoke design. I learned how to do ladder-back jacquard with this pattern, so I was really proud of doing that. And yeah, I hope to just carry on with this. This is my movie knitting at the moment because I'm on the body and it requires 0 concentration. I think when I'll be on the sleeves and I will have to do decreases, I might have to not knit that at the same time as watching a film because it's black yarn. I can hardly see what I'm doing. So that's the Halibut sweater. My second active whip is the Transylvania hoodie by a designer called Elida Virack, and it's made in collaboration with Virack Yarn Company. I think that is how you pronounce it. I will put it on screen because, you know, I'm probably getting it wrong. I'll put a picture in as well. I am knitting mine in Yarnsmith's Pebble Haze in the shade Jet. This is the Aran version, and I have got about that much so far. So this is a hoodie design that really jumped out at me, especially because it's a free pattern, and we'll talk about that in a second. But it features these really cool braided details on the shoulders. So it's a saddle shoulder top-down design in Aran weight, and her version was in a black yarn as well, and I immediately thought I need to knit this in this shade of Pebble Haze. So you can't really see it very well, but there's a braid on each shoulder, and you then knit the upper yoke with some short row shaping. You knit the front, you join in the centre front there, and then eventually you do some underarm shaping and you join in the round at the underarm. And then there is a cable developing at the underarm, which you can't really see very well yet because I haven't gotten very far. Eventually you split for a split hem with a very big curve, and I think the front and back are a different length, so it looks really cool. I think it's really interesting. There's short rows in the sleeves, which I love and need. There's a hood. There's just so many really, really cool details in this pattern, and I saw it on Instagram and I messaged the designer, I think in a comment, and I said, would you please let me know how much positive ease the model has in the photos, because as you will have seen in the photo that I put up, it's quite oversized on her, but the designer recommends 10 to 15 centimeters, and I knew because this is a long design, and despite I know there's a split hem, so it's a little bit less tricky, but again, if it has 15 centimeters of positive ease and it reaches my hip in an awkward spot, then I will have some fit issues. And she said, oh, I'm very sorry, but I just knit the design, create the pattern, and the sample gets sent to the yarn company. So I think I tagged the yarn company and inquired which size that the model was wearing, but didn't get any response. So I asked the designer again if she'd be so kind and let me know which size she knit. And she said she made size medium, which I think is the third size in the pattern. And I can tell that model is a lot slimmer than me, so I would need at least a size large, probably extra large, to get the same kind of look. So I decided to cast on a size large, which is size 4, and I didn't gauge swatch because I've knit with this yarn, as you will know if you've been here for a while. I've knit with this yarn a fair bit recently. And then I made a rookie error because I looked back at my White Day cardigan and I knew that my gauge was too tight on that one for the pattern in the end. I somehow got tighter and I was at a 19 stitch gauge and I needed 18 stitches for this. So I thought, okay, I'm just going to size up by 1 needle size. It will be perfect. Forgetting that I knit the Night Day on a 4.5, I thought I knit it on a 5. And so I'm now knitting this on a 5.5, which I think produces a really nice fabric. So I've got no problems with that at all. But it does mean that my gauge is more closer to sort of a 16, 17 stitch gauge. So I am probably getting the fit of an extra large rather than a large. But that's fine. That's what I was hoping for. I want this to be big and cozy. And it doesn't feel absolutely massive, but it's obviously bunched up on the needles here. So I think I will finish this little bit that I have here, and then I will probably put the body on hold and start a sleeve just to keep me entertained. But yeah, a really, really cool pattern. And I want to briefly touch on free patterns with you here. I have some thoughts and feelings about free patterns. So I believe there are 3 different categories of free patterns out there. And as a new knitter especially, you might be enticed to try and use as many free patterns as you can because you're already, investing lots of money in your new hobby and you're trying to keep the costs down. I think that's what a lot of people do. And I think you just need to be a little bit mindful of the 3 sort of different categories I think there are. But please let me know in the comments down below if you can think of more categories. I would love to hear it. So the first category to me are free patterns because they are very, very simple. So a designer will have created a pattern, or maybe just a hobbyist that decided to make a singular pattern for the first and only time. And it is very simple. It doesn't have a lot of shaping. It doesn't require grading or too much tech editing. So they've decided to just pop it out there as a free pattern. And there are varying grades of, professionalism within these patterns. The second category, I think, are patterns that designers will put out there to either create traction to their site so that you might see, oh, there's a free pattern, and then you might look at their paid for patterns, or it might be a pattern that they put out there as a thank you to their community for buying their patterns throughout the year. I think Sophie from the Knit Purl Girl does that with a colourwork yoke every year. And I believe if you've done a colourwork yoke in a certain yarn, she always does them in Let Lopi, you understand kind of the grading and you've got your size range, you can sort of plug and play other designs in there and just make a few changes, and it's not a massive amount of effort. So those patterns are often a little bit more complex, but not the kind that will take an absolutely astronomical amount of time to knit and to, not to knit, to design, to put out there. And as someone who has dabbled in designing, I have experienced how much work goes into designing. So I never ever shy away from paying for a pattern. I prefer to pay and then I know I'm getting what I've paid for. But there is the third category of patterns, and I want to explore this category a little bit more, and they are patterns that are created in collaboration with yarn companies. And the way I understand it, the yarn companies will get in touch with certain designers, or they might have designers that work with them all the time. Like this particular designer, her first patterns were all self-published and paid for on her Ravelry page, and the last sort of 6 or 7 have all been free patterns in collaboration with Stamford. So obviously they've got some kind of, you know, understanding between each other, and they are free patterns and they are free to you. They are pretty size inclusive. I don't know if they're fully, but this has got quite a few different sizes. You know, there's a lot of shaping in there. There's lots of short rows. There's lots of really considered details in there that you normally only get from a paid for pattern. And technically it is paid for because it's paid for by the yarn company. And they've obviously deemed it worth the expense to pay a designer to design something really beautiful and really elaborate and give it out for free as inspiration for you to then maybe buy their yarn and knit that same pattern yourself. So I don't have any obligation to buy their yarn to make this pattern, and I'm not. I'm using something that's inexpensive and really accessible to me, but I still get a free pattern, which I think is really cool. And there are a few companies that do these kind of patterns. Obviously this one is one of them. Fulkalana have got a lot of free patterns that look really, really interesting. Purl Soho, for example, has a lot of free patterns. So a lot of yarn companies do this, and I think it's definitely worth exploring. The one company that I have had less enjoyable experience with maybe is Sandnes Garn. I'm not going to talk about this too much, but if you're not familiar with Sandnes Garn, their patterns are paid for patterns, which is absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong with that, right? If that's what they want to do, I've got zero problems with that. What I don't like is that I can't download the patterns instantly. I have to buy a booklet from them. And they've gained a bit of traction in lots of different podcasts. Lots of people are knitting their patterns. And then I see a pattern that I would like, but I have to buy a whole book. And I never like doing that. So with a lot of pattern books, such as liner publishing books, I will think long and hard about whether there are enough patterns in that book that I would like to knit. Otherwise, I'll just wait until those patterns become available individually. But Sandnes Garn have only recently started publishing patterns as individual patterns. But again, you have to buy the physical copy. So you have to find a retailer. And then often you have to buy a full book. And then on top of that, you have to buy their yarn to be allowed to buy their book, which I don't really agree with. It's up to me what I knit with. You know, if I'm already paying for the pattern, I don't feel like I should have to pay for the yarn, which is a shame because Sandnes Garn is beautiful yarn. So that company is not one of these. Knitting for Olive, for example, are not one of these either, but they are individual patterns that are instant downloads, and I'm very, very happy to pay for them because they make some beautiful designs. But like I say, there are some companies out there that just give you free patterns, and they're definitely worth exploring. So yeah, this is one of them. This hoodie also exists as a children's version, so I think I might have to make one for my niece because I think it would be very, very cute on her. So yeah, this is growing really fast, so stay tuned. I will definitely have some progress on this next time. My last whip that I would like to share with you needs to come with a spoiler alert. It is my Stephen West Mystery Knit-Along shawl. This is the Mystery Musikal 2025 Mystery Knit-Along. And if you're not familiar with Stephen West's work, he is a very elaborate, very wonderful designer. And every October he does a mystery shawl. And all you know is how much yarn you need to buy, in how many colours, and that it's going to be a shawl. And then every week on Thursday you get a section of the pattern, and he calls that a clue. So I am knitting this year's shawl, and I wasn't planning to take part, and it's kind of thrown my autumn knitting plans completely out of the window. But I am really enjoying this design. It is really, really beautiful, and I'm really enjoying the yarns I'm using, and I'm just going to show you now. So if you don't want to see what this year's shawl looks like, you're still knitting on it and you don't want any spoilers, please click off now. I'm just going to ramble on about sweater fit afterwards, but let's look at the shawl. Let's look at the ends first, because my goodness, there are some ends. And I haven't listened to Stephen, and I have not woven in ends as I've gone along. So this shawl started with this section that he calls scallops. Then there was the section called squiggles and eyelets. Then there was this section, I can't remember what he called it. in clue 3, and this was also in clue 3, and I really enjoyed this one. This was so, so beautiful. Look at that. It's blowing out a little bit because I am losing daylight. And I'm now on clue 4. I've just started, and clue 4 is a very big border of brioche. So I have barely started. I have done 2 rows of brioche. You can hardly see it. And I'm just going to be slowly plugging along with this. So I'm only going to show you this whenever I've made some decent progress. I am using, this is Katia Silky Lace in the cream shade, but I've now had to switch to West Yorkshire Spinners Exquisite 4-ply, which is also a merino silk blend because I ran out. This one here is, gosh, if I could remember, Huasco Sock in the shade Peacock. And then this one and this one are hand dyed by me, and I did a little pops of mohair. I think I did some mohair in the scallops as well. There we are. So this is really hard to show you as a whole. I'm just going to stop talking and show you for a second. But yeah, this is this year's MCAL, and I'm really, really enjoying it, and I am really running out of daylight. So I'm going to pop this away and just very, very quickly talk to you about sweater fit. So I actually discussed this the other day with my friend Emily from Emily Knits. I have to mention her every podcast, don't I? And we are both having a very unsuccessful year when it comes to garment knitting. And there are a few things that play into that, and I'm just going to tell you what my opinion is and how I feel about it. I don't think it has anything to do with bad luck or anything to do with the fact that I'm not swatching very well, which I'm not. I'll hold my hands up. But there are some other things that play into it, and I think I have gone through various stages as a garment knitter, and I am gonna say I'm probably at stage 4 right now. For these are made up stages that I've come up with. So stage 1 is you've knit your first couple of garments, you've realised that you can actually knit garments, and they kind of go on your body, and you're very happy to wear them because of your first garment. Stage 2 is when you've started learning a little bit more about your dimensions, what fits you well. You might have made some modifications about length and things like that, and you start churning out the garment. And I went through that stage for a very long time. I just made garment after garment after garment, and I wore all of them, and I loved all of them because they were made by me, and I was gradually replacing my commercial wardrobe with handmade garments. And yeah, it was wonderful. And then I reached stage 3 when I started sort of having too many sweaters, and that stage went on for a very long time as well. Because I don't really like to have an excessive wardrobe, I like to have a fairly small amount of garments. I started going through and giving away and selling and destashing items that I no longer wore or that I didn't gravitate towards. And I went through that stage for quite a while, and now I'm at a point that I'm going to call stage 4, which is where I have enough garments in my wardrobe to fill all different kinds of occasions of wearing. And when I finish a new item, it has to be at least as good, if not better, than my really good garments in my wardrobe. Otherwise, I will never consider entering it into my wardrobe and removing something else instead. On top of that, I have now got an outlet somewhere where I can give my items that I don't wear, and I can recuperate the yarn cost, which is something I'm very, very privileged to have. But it also means that I don't really go in and think about fixing things. So if something's too short, I just rather move on to the next project than actually going back and frogging things and ripping back and fixing things. So that kind of doesn't help in this situation. I think I have learnt at the start of this year. So at the start of this year, I filmed a video called Every Sweater I've Ever Knit. If you haven't seen it, go back in my back catalogue, you will find it there. I tried everything on, and I decided whether I was going to keep all these items or whether I was going to give them away. And I quickly discovered that the things that I kept were either shades of light blue or light green or bluey green, or neutral colours. Cream, beige, grey, black, anything neutral. Those were the kind of things that I decided to keep. And I think I've gotten really good at just purchasing yarn now that sort of falls into those colour schemes, and I'm really happy with that decision that I've made. The thing that I haven't properly or the next thing that I realised was that I have a lot of sensory issues around my neck. I also have sensory issues about tight seams on my back that I don't enjoy. So I'm being better at consciously choosing patterns. Like, for example, the Stamford sweater has that slit, so therefore it is not really high up on my neck. So that was a really good choice in terms of sensory issues, and the colours were a good choice as well. The thing that wasn't a good choice was the size. I like an oversized garment. I like 25 to 30 centimetres of positive ease. That's just my comfort zone, and I just really need to start realising that and sticking to that a little bit more. And then hopefully I will have more successful garments in my wardrobe. So those are just things that I've been thinking about. So if you've got any thoughts and feelings about, you know, how successful your garments are and why they are successful, and what you have learnt about your garment knitting journey, if you are a garment knitter, then I would love to hear from you down in the comments below. So that rounds up today's podcast episode. I really hope to film a video fairly soon about my top 5 most worn garments, because I think that ties in really well with this, and I might be able to figure out a bit better what I need to look for in my next projects by reflecting on what my absolute favourite garments to wear are. And yeah, so that will be coming at some point. I am still planning a pattern roundup video on colourwork sweaters, so that will come at some point, but I'm just trying not to put any pressure on myself, and I just film whenever the mood takes me, and I was in the mood today. But as you can see, the light is really going, so I'm going to round things off here. Thank you so much for being here with me today, and if you enjoyed this video, I'd love it if you left me a like, a comment and subscribe, and I wish you a lovely weekend or evening or wherever and whenever you are watching this, and thank you so much for being here. Happy knitting, and see you soon. Bye bye.